Life began in the sea and flourished on land. The plant plays a major role of food producer in the natural ecosystem. Highly productive soil. It's not a mere mass of inorganic substances. Soil took a long time to emerge as it is now. It began to form after centuries of rock weathering, water erosion, chemical reaction, and the interactions of plant roots, animals, and microorganisms. The earliest settlers on rocks were lichen and moss varieties. Amazingly, a thin layer of soil 1 centimeter deep is said to take over 300 years to form. In a country like Japan, where volcanic ashes are deposited, it took several hundred to several thousand years for them to turn into soil. Water circulates through the atmosphere and the ground. Water streaming out of soil contains a lot of nutrients. The nutritious water from forests irrigates paddies and fields. Spreading near this noted Mount Fuji is the Ohito Farm of the Nature Farming International Research Foundation. Spring around the farm is the loveliest season of the year, with budding trees and wild cherry blossoms in full bloom. Since ancient times, the Japanese have always been taught man is part of this gentle nature. With hopes and patience, young farmers are building soils, seeking nature in the field. 10 years ago, the farm used to be just an abandoned wasteland. This is the soil after 10 years of practice farming. This soil has been developed by human effort. A soil sampling stick proves that the softened soil is now nearly 1 meter deep. A forest of Japanese beeches. The natural soil here simply tells how fertile it is. Forest soil is very soft because it contains a large amount of air in it. Fallen leaves and faded twigs will eventually return to nature as soil. Micro and microscopic animals are the primary dwellers on the fallen leaves, subsequently followed by microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, and actinomycetes that are invisible to the naked eyes. The screen shows how fungi invade the leaf tissues. Here, you see a swarm of bacteria feeding on fallen leaves, which are gradually decomposed. Soil under the fallen leaves. Sunlight doesn't reach this far. A lively world of tiny animals which help decompose organic matter into soil. The young farmer applied numerous kinds of organic matter to the field to build a soil as natural as it can be. This will feed tiny animals such as earthworms to live more comfortably. It has always been said in Japan that earthworms till and soften the soil. Here's a pile of compost produced by man. What's taking place here is similar to the decomposition of fallen leaves in the forest. The decomposition of organic matter needs the help of microorganisms and microanimals like tiny mites. These microorganisms, seen under an electron microscope, are in the process of decomposing organic matter. These are microorganisms called fungi. And this is a fungus spore. These are actinomycetes, which become dominant as the temperatures rise due to microbial decomposition. At the final stage, the organic matter becomes a substance called humus, which comprises a soil frame. Countless complex microorganisms are swarming around it. This is aggregated soil containing plenty of organic matter. This structure is created by the combination of humus and soil particles, silt, sand, and clay. Polysaccharides, that are long gummy chains of sugars produced by microbial metabolism, glue them and form strong aggregation. The porous structure of the soil helps store the nutrients of the crops and hold air and water, providing the microorganisms with a comfortable place to live in. The soil containing plenty of organisms is actively attracting a variety of microorganisms that feed on them. Bacteria and other primitive animals are swarming around the microorganisms. A sample of undeveloped soil in Ohito, as it was 10 years ago, is seen under an electron microscope. This is the soil at present. It has largely been improved to a better physical form, having many tiny pores. What used to be a hard and easy to clog soil has now been softened like this. A soil analysis made it clear that chemically, it was also a well-balanced soil suitable to the growth of crops. Also underway on the farm is soil building using plants. Most of them are either leguminous or gramineous plants. These are clovers sown between the wheat. And a variety of Chinese milk veg, all of which easily decompose. These leguminous plants symbiotically associate bacteria by developing root nodules. These bacteria fix nitrogen from the air, and later, this fixed nitrogen will become available to the plant. These are nitrogen-fixing bacteria called rhizobia. Here you see mycorrhizal fungi. They invade the root cells and, in exchange for sugars, they bring nutrients, especially phosphorus, back to the plant. The phosphorus taken in by the bacteria is dyed in red in this picture. Chinese milk veg is plowed under the soil to help the chemical, as well as physical and biological properties of fields. The root grows firmly, pushing the soil aside. Countless hairs begin to grow at the sides of the root. The roots of both crops and weeds break the hard soil to make it softer, thus playing an impressive part in soil improvement. Now let's observe a root growth under a microscope. Root hairs are growing sideways. A plant absorbs water and nutrients using its root hairs. What's now happening around the root? This is the growing point at the root tip. The elongation of roots takes place right here. The growing point is quite active in metabolism. The old sections continually peel off. We can see something still moving in plant cells which have come off. Then, microorganisms prey on them. Although invisible, nutrients are flowing out of the whole root. A large number of microorganisms are attracted there. They multiply by feeding on the nutrients secreting out of the root. When dead, the crop will then feed on their remains. Seen around the root are bacteria. Numerous protozoa are also observed. Microorganisms survive by cooperating with the root, creating a world very similar to intestinal bacteria in human beings. Let's now make a microscopic observation of microorganisms in soil, fighting one against another to take the nutrients. We placed two kinds of fungus spore. They extend themselves by extending hyphae from the spores. Who wins? closer look at their struggle helps us find they suddenly stop when approaching each other at a certain point. It appears as if some kind of information prevents their further growth. In this way, they seem to keep their own territories. These bacteria hold out against each other by creating a border space between them. The thick one is a kind of pathogenic fungi, and the thin one also a kind of fungi known as trichoderma. The thin one winds itself around the thick one. The thicker fungus begins to melt. This indeed presents one type of microbial competition. Many kinds of nematode in soil feed on fungi and bacteria, while some fungi eat nematodes. This fungi prepared a trap with its own body. A nematode's got caught in it. Now the fungus eats it up. Bacteria also feed on a dead nematode. Bacteria increase in number with a tremendous rate. The primitive amoebas which are emerging in front are preying on the bacteria. The amoeba approaches its victims by twisting itself. The bacteria, seen as black spots, are swallowed. But they don't melt immediately. Some of them are actually moving around inside the predator's body. Is the amoeba aiming at the orange-colored organic matter? No. It passes it and attacks a group of microorganisms. They're swallowed, melt slowly, and are eventually digested in the amoeba. But there's a time when a strong amoeba gets weakened, and soon more bacteria surround it. There are struggles for survival in an unseen underground world, where a certain ecosystem prevents the outbreak of specific organisms. This is the field where the same kinds of vegetables are successively grown every year. Large quantities of synthetic chemical fertilizers and agrochemicals are used in this field. That can cause a large outbreak of soil-borne pathogenic bacteria. Let's study the difference between the soil of such a field and that of a healthy one. We culture a suspension solution by dispersing soil into the water and compare the microorganisms coming out of it. In the healthy soil with the proper amount of organic matter, colonies of various microorganisms can be observed. We see only a few kinds of microorganisms in the diseased soil. Here, one kind of microorganism spreads over the surface in a laboratory dish. Growing longer here are the hyphae of Fusarium. a representative soil-borne pathogenic fungi. Seen on the right is the root of the crop. The fusarium gets closer to the root hair and invades the root. Attacked by the fusarium, the weakened root is now open to the attack of other microorganisms such as bacteria and nematodes. This puts an end to the crop's life. This is a wilt disease caused by the fusarium. Nowadays, the fusarium disease poses a serious problem to vegetable cultivation. This is the field where the root knot disease has damaged Chinese cabbages. The same crop has been grown repeatedly here, and the population of clubroot fungi attracted by that crop has been increased. Clubroot fungi hibernate in spores in winter. The following year, the hibernating spores wake up when Chinese cabbages are planted again. The fungi invade their roots and live in them again. When farm chemicals used to be unavailable, farmers thought of many ways to control the disease. In some districts of Japan, for example, farmers practiced mixed cultivation, planting spring onions and leeks together when growing melons. How can this method help disease control? We find antifungal microorganisms living symbiotically in the root of spring onions. These are pathogenic fungi and antifungal microorganisms at the root of the onion. The fusarium is attempting to extend its hyphae. Surrounding the fungi are bacteria, which are the antifungal microorganisms. A large swarm of this bacteria are encompassing the fungi to suppress its growth. These bacteria are also capable of melting the fungi. Mixed cultivation is one of the biological control measures making use of microorganisms instead of soil fumigation. The soil has depended much on synthetic chemical fertilizers and agrochemicals. With few organic matters, the soil surface tends to be easily eroded by wind and rain. The hardened and compacted soil has turned out almost lifeless. To revive the diseased soil, it's necessary to activate the soil microorganisms by giving plenty of organic matter in the field. the Ohito farm in early summer. Farmers have started harvesting tea in the fields. With an adequate amount of organic matter, soil in a field gets healthy, as it contains well-balanced nutrients essential to crops. It also contains air and water properly. Crops will bear sound leaves, flowers, and fruit, so long as the soil remains alive and healthy. Seen at the corner of the farm is a yard for composting materials. It's a nice place for children to play around. They want to catch beetles there. Beetles lay eggs on the bedlog after shiitake mushrooms have been cropped. Their grubs have now grown to imagos. Besides the beetles, there are many other macro and microscopic animals under the bedlog. Nature is equipped with a recycling system which returns its own waste to soil with the help of these creatures. How about human society? For the past half a century, man has been producing many things which do not exist in nature. These materials have been thrown away after use, and the ground has become a garbage pit. At present, that garbage is unfriendly to nature's recycling system. Cherry blossoms of the Ohito farm are coming into bloom again. The soil is full of vitality, giving life to new organisms. The soil is supported by many creatures in nature. If the world is considered at a cosmic level, anyone understands that human life is just one of the many forms of nature. Various forms of life pass through man as food, and thus man creates soil. Creating nature on the farm requires mysterious workings of nature, as well as human endeavors. Once interested in the reality, one would surely realize how important it is to promote sustainable agricultural practices friendly to the environment that will help us produce healthy food. The roots of crops are full of life, firmly growing in the healthy soil.